In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to identify your strengths and weaknesses as an athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Whenever I begin working with an athlete, the first thing I have them do is complete an assessment. This assessment is where I help them identify their strengths and their weaknesses. The reason that we need to identify their strengths and weaknesses is because we want to work on building upon their strengths and also turning their weaknesses into strengths. So for you as an athlete, you want to identify your strengths and weaknesses because you want to keep getting better at your strengths, right? Those things that are already strengths within your game, you want to really identify them and keep improving them because that can be what starts to separate you from your competition. But you also want to identify your weaknesses because it is so easy to allow our weaknesses to just fall behind because we're not that good at them. But if you can pull your weaknesses up a little bit, that's just going to elevate your game that much more. But we also don't want to overlook our strengths when we're working on our weaknesses because then what can happen is suddenly we improve those weaknesses, but now our strengths sometimes become weaknesses themselves. Now, to identify your strengths and weaknesses, we're going to make two lists, but each of these lists are going to be broken down into two different sections. They're going to be broken down into physical aspects of your game and mental aspects of your game. So let's start with your strengths. What are your strengths right now within your game? So on a piece of paper or on your computer or on your phone, I want you to list out all the physical strengths of your game. Your physical strengths can be in terms of, actual physical strength, right? Your power, your speed, and also your mechanics and your physical skills. Then what you want to do is you want to list out all the strengths you have in terms of your mindset, your mentality. You might say that a strength of mine is confidence, believing in myself, bouncing back from mistakes, being positive when my teammates are really negative. So just take your time right now and identify your strengths of your physical game and then also of your mental game. Next, we want to identify your weaknesses. So this one's not as fun, but when you're identifying your weaknesses, I want you to feel really good about it because you're figuring out the things you're going to start improving about your game. So what you can do is the same thing you do with your strengths. Take some time right now and list out all the weaknesses or challenges that you face in terms of your physical game and then also in terms of your mental game. Now that you've identified your strengths and weaknesses, what are you going to do with this information? Well, what I encourage you to do is look at your strengths and say, okay, am I still training my strengths? How can I train my strengths a little bit better? Look at your training program you're doing right now and just see if there's any tweaks that need to be made to make sure that you are still working on building these strengths. Then what you can do with the weaknesses is you need to ask yourself, what are the top priorities for me to work on right now? Because it's very, very difficult for us to work on every single weakness at once. When I'm working with an athlete and we identify a few different challenges that they're facing, I have to figure out what's the most important one right now that if we improve that, that's going to have the best impact on your performance. So let's say, for example, that we identify it's overcoming performance anxiety because performance anxiety and getting really nervous before a performance is a weakness for them on the mental side. Well, that's what we would focus on, and we would start talking about that and implement some mental training tools that they can use to overcome that performance anxiety. So for yourself, I encourage you to pick out one physical aspect of your game and one mental aspect of your game that you identified are weaknesses and start applying them into your training program. And as those become easier to train, you start to identify that you're getting a little bit better at them. Then maybe you want to reduce the amount of time you're giving to that weakness and figure out another weakness that you want to work on right now. But identifying your strengths and weaknesses, both in terms of your physical game and in terms of your mental game, is such an important thing for you to do as an athlete because you want to make sure that you are continually improving. And as simple as this exercise is, it isn't something that all athletes are doing. So if you can do this and you actually stick to it and you take the information that you learn and you apply it to your training, that's a way for you to really give yourself an edge over the competition. Now, once you identify maybe some weaknesses in terms of your mental game, you might have some questions about how you can work on them. So what I want you to do is if you have any questions about weaknesses that you've identified mentally, I want you to leave them in the comments below. And what I'll do is I'll make a video for you that will help you overcome that weakness and turn it into a strength. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.